If you remember, God founded the nation of Israel through a man named Abraham. Before Abraham, every man of God was a Gentile. But God starts a new nation with a man named Abram. And initially, if you remember, he had two sons, the son of promise, who was called Yitzhak, Isaac, and the son of the bondwoman, Ishmael. Ishmael, in turn, had 12 sons that formed the Arab nations of the world. Isaac, the son of promise, had two children, Jacob and Esau, and Jacob became the line through which the Messiah would come. He had 12 sons, and those 12 sons corporately, after he was renamed Yisrael, were called simply Israel, the sons of Israel. If you remember, a famine came in the land of Israel, and so the 12 tribes end up in Egypt, and God, through the watch care of Joseph, provides not just for the Jewish people, but for the surrounding nations. Joseph dies, the people multiply, and Exodus opens by reminding us there came a time when a new king arose who did not know Joseph. And so just as God had prophesied to Abraham, they were in the land of Egypt for 400 years. But then, just as God prophesied, he released his people through the leadership of Moses. Moses' life was 120 years. It's easy to follow. It's 40, 40, 40. 40 years in Egypt, 40 years in the wilderness where he was a sheep rancher, and then 40 years again in the wilderness as he carries the people to the edge of the promised land. He dies, and after his death, Joshua steps up. And of course, after Joshua dies, within one generation, the people of Israel forsook God. In one generation, degeneration took place. In that period of unbelief, we typically refer to it as the time of the judges, where the Jewish people were ruled by various judges. But eventually, the people wanted a king like the surrounding nations, and so God gave them the desires of their heart. And we enter into what we call the period of the monarchy, or the period of the kingdom. The first three kings in Israel's history were the most famous: SDS, Saul, David, and Solomon. But if you remember, for 120 years, each man, Saul, David, Solomon, each served exactly 40 years, for 120 years. So for 120 years, the kingdom of Israel was united. But if you remember, due to Solomon's moral compromise, the kingdom split north and south. And so Rehoboam steps up to the throne, Solomon's son. He foolishly listens to the younger leaders in the nation, and he makes some very stupid mistakes. And in his pigheadedness and his greed, the nation divides in two. Here's a map that will give you a picture of what it looked like during that time. In 931, Solomon's son Rehoboam, he causes a split. And so remember, there were 12 tribes. 10 of the tribes in the north form what, as this map shows, is called Israel. And that can be a little confusing as you study the scripture, because sometimes the term Israel is used to refer to all 12 tribes, especially up until the time the kingdom is united. But then after the kingdom divides, Israel typically is a term that's used to describe the 10 northern tribes, and they form their own kingdom of sorts under a fellow named Jeroboam. He doesn't want the people to go back to Jerusalem to worship the one place God had specified, and so he creates his own centers of worship using bulls as emblems. And of course, from 931 BC to 209, the northern kingdom, again called Israel, they have 20 kings, and every single king in the northern kingdom is wicked. The two southern tribes, Judah and Benjamin, they go after the name of the larger tribe. They are called Judah. And they had 20 kings as well. 12 that are wicked, only 8 that are good. So the northern kingdom, Israel, ignores God's command. They begin to dry up spiritually. They turn to an idolatrous lifestyle. And so God sent these different prophets to warn them. And in 722, just as God had predicted, the Assyrians came down and carried them away into captivity. The southern kingdom went another 136 years, and then in 586 BC, just as God had prophesied, The Babylonians came and carried away the 2 southern tribes. So to keep it straight, just remember I comes before J, A comes before B. Israel is carried away by the Assyrians. Judah is carried away by the Babylonians. All right? Now, I comes before J, A comes before B. It's just a simple way in which to capsulize in your thinking how this history unfolded.